Welcome back to another episode of Earthcast, potentially the start of Season 4. Today, I'm joined by Adrian Ndayambaje, the Rwandan national freediving champ. And we are hoping to create a space for discussions around the topic of freediving in Africa. Now, perhaps this is an overly ambitious task, but one that we've decided to delve into together. As Adrian and I co-host, we are actively inviting all of the listeners to get involved. The more feedback, the better this potential season could be. We're just recording a call to action today, and we're going to get the juices flowing, the ideas going. And this is the first time I'm personally trying this approach with Earthcast. So I'm really grateful to have you with me, Adrian. So thank you so much. And in light of World Oceans Day as well, what a perfect time for this to culminate. I just wanted to say at the beginning, when we first started having these discussions, I was really hesitant to tackle such a big task and do justice to a full continent. So thank you for pursuing this with me and giving me the confidence that we should actually be doing this together and try and create some sort of body of literature, knowledge and information sharing about a continental discussion. I'd like it to be a celebration and highlighting the diverse freediving cultures and practices around the continent. And the listeners, you guys, this is all about you now. We're asking you to come and get involved and share your water stories, as well as hearing from various African divers, social activists, record holders, scientists, and wisdom keepers, and more. If you want to contact us, that information is in the description below, or you can direct message us on Instagram. So, Adrian, if you don't mind, how did we meet? Why are we doing this? Why Earthcast?
Good question. How did we meet? We obviously met through freediving. We met at Long Street Swimming Pool, but we never really spoke. It would be a hi and bye while I helped out all the other freedivers training, and I was just lifeguarding at that time. And, fast forward a bit, you doing freediving, I'm doing freediving in our own private space. And SA Champs comes along and you compete, I compete, and we just have, fun entering into this new sport for the both of us. And we were taking the photos at the ceremony and we found ourselves sitting next to each other and communicating and talking. And then later on in the day, I saw your Instagram profile and that you have a podcast, right? And in my head, I've always wanted to do a podcast, but I never had the confidence to doing it and just putting my voice out there, putting my opinion out there, putting my views out there. And something, dawned on me while I was thinking, and I was like, I've always wanted to share a side of freediving that many people don't know. People always see freediving now as a sport to fear. It's very extreme. And in all honesty, there is that side of freediving, but that's not the whole perspective of freediving. And so there can be a very fun, enjoyable side. And a part of me was like, why not just message Olivia and ask her, why don't we just try doing a podcast on freediving? And boom, you said yes. I was super surprised that was going to be that quick and easy, but I loved it. And now we find ourselves here sitting across each other having this conversation.
I haven't told you this yet, but we didn't find ourselves sitting next to each other. I was gravitated towards you. I was fangirling over our Rwandan national champ in the pool, and I was just lucky that we got chatting. So I'm so glad that you reached out, feeling very, mustn't let it go to my head, but I was very stoked, and just loved the conversation that we had. So I think it was also very brave that you brought it to me, us not knowing each other as well at that stage, and then that coffee that we had, we sat and we spoke. We should have recorded that discussion. That was unbelievable. We were uncovering topics from, we started talking about freediving is great, but what about the fact that only 1 in 7 South Africans can swim? And then we started unpacking deeper and deeper and looking at, what topics would be interesting to explore? Who would we like to discuss them with? So thank you so much. Thanks for that intro. And Adrian, if you don't mind, I would love you to tell us, and myself and the listeners, a little bit more about your own background, how you were personally drawn to freediving, and you're the national Rwandan champ. How did that happen? Give us the lowdown.
Sure. So let's start with how I got into freediving. I was just doing lifesaving at the time, taking a little break from university, and I was just working as a lifeguard for the city of Cape Town at Long Street Pools. And there's always been this thing about me ever since I was young, right? It started in primary school. I grew up at a school at St. Anthony's where we just had soccer and cricket. as the option of sports. So your winter sport, your summer sport, and that was it. And then leaving grade 6, coming to grade 6, grade 7, we got a multi-purpose court at school. And so there was added volleyball and things. And for me, I personally just wanted to try things. I'd always watch these videos and I'd be like, one day I want to just, do. And so came to high school, and I remember my best friend and I, Liam Calvert, we were at school and we were like, you know what? The school basically offers everything, all the sports, and we've only done 2 sports before. Like, why not? Let's just like sign up for all the sports and do it. We have time. We're at school up until 5 p.m. anyways. Let's just go. And so we found ourselves doing everything: cricket, cross country, badminton, table tennis, just enjoying it and just being allowed to be able to do that. And so for me, it's always been a thing of access, always wanting to be able to try something new and do something new. And I always found that I just had a knack for whenever I tried something sporty, it just clicked for me. And so for that, I've always just been open to doors, to like trying something new, mountain biking, whatever the case may be. And so I'm at the pool and I'm just doing my own thing. And it started with Alessandro and Bevan. Especially watching Bevan train in the pool, and Alessandro would always be like, when are you going to join us? When are you jumping in the pool? And I was always just like, no, not for me. No, I'm just going to watch.
Bevan and Ale.
Yeah, shout out to them. Because I was just like, no, not a chance. And I kept playing it off. And then one day I was swimming in the pool. And then as I was hopping out, Bevan, first I did it underwater before I left. And Bevan saw that. And Bevan got to the end of the pool and she's like, Evan's doing Freediving Expo, why don't you go enjoy? And I was like, it looks like it's very organized. And she's like, no, don't just say I sent you over, and just like have a feel and see what they're doing. And I looked and I saw everyone in the wetsuits, and I'm just chilling in my speedo, and I'm just like, do I go? And I'm like you know what, I'm at work, I have free time, it's a Sunday, there's probably not much is going to be happening at the pool. Okay, let me walk down. I walk down to Evan, I ask Evan, can I join? Evan's like, cool, you can join, just slot in the pool and just listen to everything that I'm saying and then follow my lead. I get inside the water with everybody, and they all telling us like how to breathe, and Evan's explaining because at the point when I got in, they were doing statics. So Evan's explaining the statics format and how you're supposed to breathe up. And then from there, we're just going to try and hold our breaths. And so I'm thinking, my floating's not very great. Like, I'm not going to hold my breath with the wetsuit. I'm going to lay on top of the water. Like, I'm just going to sink. And it's going to be, like, difficult because, like, everyone needs to relax. I can't relax. I'm going to need to force myself to stand in the water. So I was like, okay, let's just do this. So I say, let me grab the ladder. And everybody goes down to hold their breath. And I just pop myself underneath the ladder. And I'm just laying there, just holding my breath. And I see one by one people coming up, people's going up, but I'm like, I still feel comfortable. So I'm like, okay, let me stay. And in the corner of my eye, I see someone still in the water. And I'm like, okay, let's just try and stay as long as they stay. And we're staying. And I'm feeling very comfortable. Eventually, I can't. The person gets up. I can't anymore. I get up. And then there's still someone in the pool that's still holding the breath. And I'm like, darn it, no, that should have been me. Come on. Like, I could have gone longer. And as I do that, Matt's still standing up in front of me. And I didn't know him at the time. I just knew that he came to train. And he's like, do you do this often? Like, have you ever held your breath like this before? And I'm like, no. This is like, it's just, I don't know. I don't know how to explain it, but like, it just felt comfortable for me. And he's like, can you do it again? And then I'm like, okay. And I do it again. And then I do the same time, but just like with a few seconds extra. And then Matt's like, do you know who I am? I'm like, no. He's like, I'm Matt Stowe, owner of the freediving company, Freediving Africa. And he tells me like that the breath all time that I do is above average. And so we start chatting, and he's like, would you really like to try the sport? And I'm like, yes. And he's like, what size are you? I say size 9. He's like, we're the same size. Like, you can use my fins. And everyone's getting sent over to the other side of the pool because we're going to do 25s now. And Matt's like, cool, I'm personally going to be next to you and I'm just going to show you and we're going to watch you. And Matt brings his equipment over. And next thing I know, I'm doing 25s, then 50 meters underwater. And Matt's like, cool, would you like to join freediving as a sport? And boom, next thing I know, I'm getting freediving fins. I'm getting a snorkel mask. And they're like, Matt's just putting practice into me. And I'm just like, what is happening? Like, Bevan asked me to join. And for me, it was just like, I'm just going to be here, just going to like experience what everyone does. And before I knew it, I fell in love with another new sport. And like math just made it enjoyable for me. Everyone, and the thing that I really enjoyed was, as much as everyone was training, everyone was very open to me with the sport. From Wendy, from Alessandro, from Bevan, from Evan, from Matt, from Tamsin, all just Sophia, all just like allowing me to like train and have fun with them. And for me, it's like, I'm a beginner. Like, it's like, you training for competitions. Do you really like want to waste time with me? Not sure like if I'm going to do it or not. But that's how it all started. And, jump forward to competition day, how that happened was, that was wild. It was a sequences of, Matt Stowe still having me under his wing and allowing me to come to their freediving classes where I was learning a lot of breathing work. I was going to Blue Rock with them, trying out some depth diving, doing a lot of pool work. And they were having a competition and Matt said, would you be keen on joining? And, I was like, I would be keen. Like, I'm not as good as everyone. Like, everyone's hitting 100 meters. I'm 50 meters. Like, that's where I'm playing around. But,
I'm a 50-meter girl as well here.
Yeah. Join the team. And so I was just, you know what? Let's give it a go. What harm could come from it? And so, day one, we went, competed, and like, thank you to Matt Stowe and Tamsin. They paid for my entry fees and things like that. And I got into the competition and I competed. And day one, I remember I was so nervous. I was so nervous. Like, I thought to myself, like, oh, I'm going to go big and I'm going to do this. And I think it was day one when I set 60 meters for myself, if I remember correctly. But I didn't know at the time you could do 1 meter, 2 meter. Like, I always saw people do 1 meters and 2 meters, but I never understood why. So for me, it was like, I want to get 60 and more, and I know I can. But I didn't know the nerves were going to hit me that hard the morning when I was in. And so I didn't reach 60 meters. And so I got a yellow card for that. And it was disappointing, but fun at the same time, being able to compete. Getting up there, being able to do a clean dive. The only bad side to it was I put a distance higher than I achieved. And then that day, as soon as on day one of the dive, we knew that I was a Rwandan guy as a freediver. And they asked me, well, like, Adrian, like, double check. Like, obviously, when you're South African, but like, I still ask you, Olivia, like, are you South Africa? Like, and so they asked me, Adrian, how do you feel about diving as a Rwandan freediver? I was like, that would be cool. And they were like, there's no other Rwandan freediver out there, if I stand corrected, right? And I'm like, not that I know of. If anyone goes, not that they know of. And then they're like, so why don't we get you registered? And they were like, what's the format to getting somebody registered to dive? And I was like, I don't know. And so they have this whole chat and then they're like, are you keen? And I'm like, I'm so keen. And they were like, okay, all you have to do is get a doctor's note. I will sort out everything for you. Next thing I know, I'm headed off to, because I always loved, the nice thing was that it was on my campus as well at UWC, where I studied at the University of the Western Cape. And so I head down to the doctor's office. I get a doctor's note clearing me to free dive. And then Matt Stowe pays for my registration with USA Freediving, and Evan sorts that out with all the people that he knows. And overnight, I'm a registered competitive freediver, and the next day, I'm diving for a national record, which is insane. To think that, like... Dude,
I have goosebumps. That is unbelievable. Yo, the turnaround time is so fast.
It's so fast. Oh. Like, I was thinking, like, here I am. I'm gonna take time, to compete. Like, you don't just do this overnight. Like, to think that Western Province Champs, if I'm not mistaken, was around about October, November.
Yeah, that was November last year.
Last year, yes. And I started freediving end of June. Like, I got introduced end of June.
Oh my goodness.
End of June. This July, August, September, October. That's 5 months. And I'm competing in a competition. And then on the day one of the competition, I'm competing as a competitive, recognized Rwandan freediver, which is insane to think that all of that just happens in 5 months. Like normally, if I'm thinking I'm competing big at something called a Western Province Champs, like that's going to take time to train. Like you're putting in all the work, and within 5 months, I'm competing. The next day, they're saying, Adrian, cool, we're going to set a national record, you know, and it's like, whoa. And I'm thinking, the next day I was thinking, Adrian, now we're pushing, we're going to go big. But then it's like, Adrian, you're setting a national record. You need a clean dive now. Like, don't push yourself until you can't anymore. Dive. And so it's like, okay, Adrian, now focus. Just beat your score of yesterday and do better than that. And boom, bombs your ankle. Did my first dive, 75 meters, or should I say my second dive on day 2. And set the national record. And then, yeah, from there, we just kept doing the sport and just kept meeting new and fun people around the sport. And it's been an amazing journey thus far.
Yo, Adrian, thank you so much for sharing. I didn't realize that you'd only started training in July last year. That's something I did not know. So, yo, that's huge.
Still a baby in the sport.
Yeah, it was crazy. I mean, we competed in both of those events, both of those competitions in various events. And last year in November was also my first competition. But I've been freediving since I was 14. Not competitively or with much effort or enthusiasm, but I do love the sport. But as you were saying earlier, there's a difference between freediving the sport and sort of freediving the practice. And one of the calls to action about this episode that we're going to be doing is not to necessarily unpack so much competitions. I mean, I'd love to go there, but today we wanted to talk about what are the other topics that we'd like to get deeper into. So, you know, we've just spoken about competition now and it's your learnings, i.e. like if you think you're going to do a 75-meter dive, don't set the bar at 75. I did the same for my first static. I set my personal best down as my goal. And I didn't know that would give me a yellow card if I didn't exceed it. So all of these things you learn. Yo, there's so many freediving disciplines. Maybe that's where we should start. Actually, Adrian, what are the different disciplines?
So in the pool, there's statics. There's your monofin discipline. There's bifin. And the bifin is just you doing dynamics with fins that's on both your feet, whereas monofin is just one fin covering both your feet. And then there's the no fins discipline, which just means you freedive, arms, body. And those are your 4, monofin, bifin, dynamic, and then your statics. And personally, I really love my statics for freediving. I don't know how everybody else loves the dynamics. I, for one, just love calm, laying on top of the water, and just basically sleeping.
This is the constant discussion, right? It's trying to find the buddy for statics. It's easy to find a dynamics buddy to do the distance, but to find the statics when you're just lying still, yeah, you gotta find a patient buddy for that.
Very patient.
Yeah, I also enjoy the statics, although it's a big mental game, hey? Big mental game. I wanted to ask you something. So now we're sitting here now, it's almost World Oceans Day. This will be published on World Oceans Day, but as we're recording it, how many national records do you have now?
4 at the moment.
4 at the moment? I love the confidence. And what disciplines have you got those in?
So monofin, bifin, no fins, and static.
So you've cleaned up the board. That is unreal.
For the pool.
And depth, what are your feelings on depth for yourself?
Personally, I love depth. It's a mixture of dynamic and static, which I really enjoy. You kind of have to work your way down to the free fall, and then from the free fall, you're just doing a static dive to the bottom. And then after that, you turn around, becomes a dynamic again. It's quiet out there. It's cold out there. It's peaceful. It's just you, your thoughts, and like setting a goal, setting a target, but also knowing your benchmark, right? In a pool, you kind of can go as far as you can. And you can push today. I can push further. Whereas with depth, it's kind of understanding my body and knowing how far possibly I could go and just slowly starting and say 5 and completely mastering 5, then completely mastering 10, then completely mastering 15. It's not, I do 15 and then I can straight away jump to 20, you know. You do it until you're completely comfortable and you move on. And so I like that there's a slow, steady growth to it. And for me, the depth, really enjoying it at the moment. I do feel great about it. As soon as I can sort out my equalization on my right ear, which I think it's just about checking it out, because going feet first down on depth, I can equalize perfectly going head first as soon as I pass 7 meters or I do more than 2 dives going head first. My right ear's equalization just keeps tuning me.
So I guess, Adrian, to come back to what we're doing today, but today's more just a discussion of what topics we'd like to get into, sort of the nitty gritty. I'm just reading off what I've written here: ocean inclusivity, ocean accessibility. Going back to the most important one, being able to swim, drowning prevention. We're very privileged to be able to talk about freediving when most people in South Africa cannot swim due to systemic oppression. That's not by choice. Yeah, and then we wanted to talk about freediving, the practice versus freediving, the sport. And we've spoken quite a bit about the sport and what it means to you as a sport. But if there's anything else you wanted to add to that about the practice of freediving.
The practice of freediving it's amazing in a way that it has space for everybody. It's the first thing that I love. There's people that don't know how to swim, but if you with the right people, with instructors, they can easily show you water comfortability, putting on a wetsuit, being buoyant, just being able to walk into the water and, be able to look at the little starfishes, look at the coral reefs that we have in Cape Town, and there's that niche for people who you're not looking to go deep. You just want to have an experience of being able to say, I stepped foot into the ocean today. I experienced creation on another level. And then you get the next sphere where it's like, I want to explore. I want to have fun. I want to be able to say that one day I can go down and swim with dolphins. If I'm lucky, maybe see a seal pass me, see a couple of fishes underneath the water. And then it goes a bit further. And then there's ones who's like, I want to go where like it's dark down there, and I want to plummet and see how far I can go. And you're able to do that. There's practices that you can put into place to allow your body to reach that stature for you to be able to do that. And then you have the last sphere where it's like, I can do it all. Now I want to compete, I want to compete against myself. It's finding a group of people that are all willing to compete against themselves to see how well they can do themselves in a competition environment. It's not to say that I want to beat Olivia Taylor, but it's to say, how long can I actually hold my breath, and then get 10 other people who are also saying the same thing. I want to see how long I can hold my breath. Let's all meet up and let's just on the day see who can hold their breath the longest, right? Who then can go get in a pool and go the furthest. And I think a lot of the times people think it's very much of we all wanting to beat the other person, but it's just more of a mental state of understanding your body and realizing that freediving makes you understand your bodies in ways you didn't think you could, I think sometimes of like how I'm normally doing like stretches and like, you try out a bit of yoga to calm yourself down. And then you come to freediving and you understand there's a different type of calm. Like there's like relaxation, but then really relaxing and going further than that to understand your body, learning to control your oxygen level intake so that you can kind of do more, learning to understand how to fight uncomfortability, if you're ever experiencing contractions in the water and being okay with that, And so there is honestly so much in the freediving aspect. And that's what I love about it, that there's space for you everywhere. If I am a bit fearful of competing, you don't need to compete. Freediving isn't just competing. We can say, let's go down to the ocean, and that's one of the things I'm very blessed that freediving has allowed me as well again. It's because growing up, I was privileged enough that my parents, who don't know how to swim surprisingly, gave me and my brother swimming classes, through our church. And so we learned how to swim when we were kids. And as much as they put us into swimming classes, they were still very fearful of the water. So we were taught, cool, Adrian, you can swim, but only in the pool. You're not going to the ocean. Ocean's dangerous, scared. Until I was old enough and I was like, I'm not going to need you to drop me there. So I can kind of go with the friend now. And I trust myself. I'm good enough. I can swim. I know I can, and then experiencing the beach, but then I don't have the ability to swim down underneath to like go deep. I can't equalize. I don't know the methods. So I'm just swimming at the beach, enjoying it, learning a bit how to surf with friends and then enjoying that. And now it's like I have freediving as a new ability, in my back pocket to now say that Adrian, you can go with a couple of people to Windmill Beach and we can explore the coral reefs. And that's now a new excitement because as much as I could swim, I didn't have that access to go to the beach and do what I'm doing now because I didn't know the know-hows to do it. And now, thankfully, I've met a lot of people in my lives who have helped me, Nelson Miranda, Matt Stowe, that I can now do and experience that different culture that's right there on our doorsteps. I've lived in Cape Town my whole life, essentially. And I think it was only last year that I started deep diving into the ocean, and it's been there. Like Muizenberg, Simonstown, it's not a far drive. It's 30, 40 minutes away. And I've only done it last year. Knowing how to swim since the age of 4, I've only done that last year, So it's quite insane to look at it when I think about it that way.
Yeah, it's a special story. Thank you for sharing that. I guess my swimming history or like accessibility to water is quite different to yours, in that I grew up with, swimming pool in my backyard, and my dad was telling me the story the other night about the first time he took me surfing, and I was 7 months old, and he was holding my hands, and I was riding my grandfather's longboard. And so, yeah, there's very, very different stories from both of us about how we were introduced, but exactly through our parents. I remember my mum holding me in the pool as a kiddie, and my dad taking me surfing when I was younger. I could surf before I could ride a bike. Still can't really ride a bike or surf, but yeah, just I think it's cool that we're able to share so vulnerably our different experiences together, especially when we sat down in person, despite recording online, us both being in Cape Town, but when we sat together with those stories that come up are really important, I think.
No, definitely. I always think like how fortunate and lucky I am, when it comes to swimming. There was a lot of people in my neighborhood, in schools that grew up that never knew how to swim, and I always only ever felt that when I would go to like a swimming pool or a beach, and people would always be like, are you sure you can swim? Do you know how to swim? And I'll just be like, why is that? Like, why is everybody asking, Adrian, are you, do you not just want me to I can show you? And everyone would be very hesitant. And as I was growing old, I just understood the environment that I was in, that, people of color are not known for swimming. And it was always funny. I would only always swim 3 times of the year. I remember because our church, I go to the Retreat Seventh-day Adventist church, and that's where I learned how to swim as a kid. Because we Sabbath keepers, a lot of the times we're not able to compete on school levels and have competitions on a Saturday. And so the church kind of made a way for us to kind of have our own competitions growing up, so that we always didn't kind of feel left out. So there would be an Olympiad, which would be a track event, and you would get to be able to run and compete against all the other Seventh-day Adventist children growing up on the Sunday. And they would have the swimming gala, but swimming can only happen in the summer. So it would happen that the gala would happen in April. And then that meant that your church had time to compete, practice from December, January, February. But we would always train January because December, obviously everyone's busy, traveling, family visitation. So it would be January, February, March, Adrian's in a swimming pool, after school, coming home Monday, Wednesday, going to swim, and on a Sunday to practice. So I'd practice 3 times in a pool in a week. After April, don't catch me in a swimming pool. I'm not in a pool. I'm not walking. There's no people now. There's no one to walk with anymore to the swimming pool. So I'm not going. And maybe on a Sunday, if my brothers and everyone together, we would go to the swimming pool. If we had enough money, we would walk to the swimming pool and swim. But other than that, the rest of the year, I wouldn't swim. So I'd only swim 3 months out of a year until I got to high school, where the school had access to a swimming pool. And then I was like, no, there's no ways I'm not swimming. I'm enjoying this, and found myself swimming consecutively. And that's where I was really good as a kid, surprisingly. But at high school, I learned to hound my strokes even more and get even better. And it's paid off, in terms of I ended up learning to become a lifeguard. I ended up learning to become a swim coach. And so that small thing that was nurtured as a kid, pays up in big respects later on. And it's always something where I look and I wish everybody else had that opportunity to kind of learn how to swim when they're young. Because I look at people now when I'm teaching them how to swim as adults, and it's hard with kids. As soon as they trust somebody, they just want to learn and they can just jump into the water. Whereas adults, you understand the dangers. And so your thought process is extremely different, and you don't want to trust yourself because you know how many things could go wrong if you got into the water and possibly it went that way. And, you go on like a boat trip and you realize people can't jump off the boat to swim, or you go camping and there's a pool and nobody can just jump in because you can't swim. And it's like you miss out on so many great things just because of one little aspect in your life that you don't have access to. And that's why my whole life my thing has always been chasing access to sports that you've never been deemed allowed to do because of your skin color or because of the money in your bank account. You can't do it. I've always tried to break that narrative and be like, Adrian, you're going to do it somehow, some way. You're going to find yourself doing it. And I don't know. Like, God has really helped me meet so many amazing people along the way growing up that I've been able to always do that one thing that everyone would look at me when I was a kid and would have told me by a long mile, there's no way you're doing that in your life. And like now I am doing it, and it's quite cool. It's really, really cool that I'm able to be allowed this gift as a person of color to be able to do all of these things. And it's nice that the world's kind of changing where we almost we're trying our best to level it out, whereas people of color are being allowed and accepted to do more things. And it's not frowned upon because, in the your black communities, it would be frowned upon. When I would say as a kid, leaving all my friends who are playing soccer and I'm saying, I'm going swimming. You doing what now? You're going where? Why? That's not for us. That's for quote unquote white people. Why are you wasting your time? Bro, stay on land. That's where we're meant to be, But now it's so much cooler to see your friends being like, hey, Adrian, I'm going for swimming lessons. Or, hey, Adrian, can you teach me how to swim now? It's so much nicer to see all of that narratives change compared to back in the day where I'd be made fun of just for wearing a Speedo because, that's so gay to do. And it's like, no, it's not. It's so fun to do because it allows you to do so much more, And it's really cool to see all of that slowly changing. And hopefully, we can keep making that change. There's already a lot of people out there youth that are doing all of these things to change it. And so hopefully we can also just do our small little parts here and there to make that great change.
It's a lot to absorb and process. Thank you for your vulnerable share and also lovely stories. I guess this is a good time to ask you, because I've mentioned it already, what topics I want to talk about in further seasons. But ocean inclusivity, blah, 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 pay barriers, I've said those. Do you think I'm missing here? What else do you want to talk about? And maybe who would you like to interview? Who would you be shy to interview maybe?
Would I be shy to interview? It's a tough one because at the same time, I think I've been, let's say this last year, I've been privileged enough to meet a lot of freedivers in Cape Town who've done amazing things. But I would say I would love to have a conversation that we had in private to be put on a platform so that they can share with everybody else, because that would be honestly that's kind of one of the biggest things that I want to see happening is people hearing everyone else's stories around the ocean, from just your friendly ocean goers to the competitive goers, and everyone understanding what freediving is all about, just to get people to explain their ocean stories. And for me, to get them on this platform, right? And it would be Shamir Mahut, Megan Rose, Nelson Miranda, Matt Stowe in terms of safety. It would be Sophia Van Carlo. It would be Bevan Reynolds. Those for me, would be the immediate ghost that I know that we kind of have access that we can just tackle and kind of ask you to come and join on the show, because I've learned a lot from them and kind of just, being in their bubble and sphere and learning their little stories of how they got into the sport, their challenges, and sometimes you also judge a book by, its cover, and you're like, oh no, seeing what you're doing, surely this is easy for you. Maybe on one side, it's oh, you have access. So this is it's just easy for you, or like training for you so easy, but then understanding, their challenges as well, getting to where they are. Even if you look at it on an economic level, as you might have an advantage, but even with your advantage, there's still challenges, and just hearing that side, and then someone else who you're at your disadvantage, but you've also managed to make it into the sport, The famous one for me that stunned me, and I know he won't mind me saying this, was Nelson Miranda being a freediving instructor, and he's taught me so much. And it was such a shock when he told me, I don't know how to swim. And I was like, Like, say what now?
He said what?
You can't. Wait, and you're doing all of this? Like, I see you in the ocean for hours and you can't swim, or you depth diving, 40 plus meters, and you're telling me you can't swim. And it's just like hearing his story and then how he got into sport and, his success in it. And it's just like, wow, like, you would see someone and then I would automatically, I'm thinking like Nelson Mandela, like, great, you're in the water, you can swim, you can do all of these things. And then he's like, no, like I can't swim. I've learned now, but like, I didn't know how to swim when I did the sport. And I was doing all of these things, not knowing how to swim, And so I always see him as a unique way when he teaches people that, and like, he's always good at people who can't swim. He can teach you how to be water safe and be in an environment, in your wetsuit with your flippers and understanding how to be safe in that environment. And then when you're coming out, knowing that, cool, I am disciplined enough to know that I can't swim without these, let's say like a wetsuit as your flotation device. So I can't just go into the ocean and say, I'm going to go for a swim. No. But if I'm with my wetsuit, my weight belt and my flippers, I'm well equipped to, swim around the bay. And I see some of his students that, like, I remember there was a day last year when Shamir had the open day at Windmill Beach. I can't remember the girl's name, but she was one of Nelson's students, and she was out with us in the water and she was just very comfortable, and it was cool to see. And she comes out of the water and we're chilling, and I'm speaking to Kezia, and then Kezia and I decide, we say we're going to go and jump off the rocks. And she's like, I want to jump too. And I'm like, okay, cool, let's go and swim. And she's like, I can't swim. And I'm like, no ways. Wait, we were in the water for hours. And she's like, no. And then I remembered how Nelson told me. And so it's like so cool to see. And she just, gets the flippers, not the flippers, sorry. She got the boots and a wetsuit. And then from all of a sudden, she was super comfortable. Without the wetsuit, knows can't swim, puts wetsuit on, swims all the way out to the rocks with us and jumps off the rock, And that was super cool to see that, like, there's also different ways to learning to be water comfortable and being able to navigate in the water. We're still out not knowing the know-hows per se to swim, which was really mind-blowing and cool for me to see.
That is such an important point, I think, that people forget about as well, that there are many different ways to learn how to swim and be comfortable in the water. For all intents and purposes, I was a safe swimmer by the age of 10, but, I'm actually really scared of water. A lot of people don't know that about me, or when I tell them, they're like, no, that's surely not true. But I think to add a little bit about my story, which I wasn't going to do, but when we spoke about it in our little chat, I thought maybe I would bring it up for the first time on Earthcast. But since we're talking about different ways of learning to swim and be in water, it's interesting that the wetsuit was what was comforting, because I often find that wearing a wetsuit makes me feel more safe in the water, not having it touching my skin. And I don't know what it is about that, about maybe a type of tactile defensiveness or whatever, but I often find that when I'm most stressed in my life, I struggle to swim the most and to get into the water, to change the barrier from being dry to getting into water. One of the other topics I'd love to chat to someone about, I don't know who, would be reaching out to, or someone listening, please come chat to us about this. We're looking for someone who knows about health and freediving. A doctor, come speak to us, please. But yeah, there's been a trend, and a lot of women I've spoken to, specifically women, but in supporting their relationships with their bodies and improving their relationships with food. I struggled with disordered eating for about 14 years before it was diagnosed. And once it was diagnosed and I started to recognize periods of my life that were more difficult, it was more difficult to get into the water as well. And that was quite an interesting realization for me. And so I think a topic I'd like to cover as well, some part during this season, is recovery and what freediving can do, physical health benefits for recovery. And I feel guilty bringing it up, given we've just been talking about the fact that only 1 in 7 South Africans can swim. That's just one of the countries in Africa. We've got 35,000+ kilometers of coastline. But yeah, sorry, as per usual, I'm getting off topic. I guess long story short, I'd love to hear someone talking about specifically disordered eating. In my case, it was anorexia, the 8 different types of eating disorders. But yeah, and freediving has really helped me heal from that illness and continues to. So I'm very grateful for that opportunity. Yeah, I'm just looking here at the other topics we put down to discuss.
Before we move on to the other topics, it's only fair for me to also ask as well, who's your, people that you would like to interview, your water superheroes? Can't run away from that.
I can't run away from my question. I'm asking you. Oh, okay. Who do I want to interview? There are so many people that I'd like to interview. The awkward part, though, is that most of them I dive with in the pool. I want to say weekly. They won't vouch for that it's weekly. They're like, no, we see it twice a month, maybe. But the people that I'm most curious to interview are the people I know in the pool. And I'm really shy to ask my friends who I'm actually fangirling over to interview them. And when I say the pool, I mean, greater water community in Cape Town. But, everyone from Bevan Reynolds, as you were saying earlier, I remember it was like, I think my second or third time at the pool. And she was like, do you mind taking a video for me? I'm just doing a quick 200 underwater. And I was like, what? And yeah, so, they're just wonderful people. But you want specifics. Okay, yeah, Shamir I'd love to interview him. Shamir, please let me interview you. Let us interview you. One of us anyway. I'd love Zandi and Lovo to come on and speak. And I would hate to give her an instruction of what to speak about. But she is a water woman. She's just one of my heroes, ocean heroes. And I'd love her to come on and speak. I'd love to hear what she has to say, what she thinks I should have asked her. Who else would I be shy to speak to? I don't know. I guess for me, the season is more about a celebration of different cultures and communities. So what would be really satisfying for me is to discover for ourselves other communities and cultures of freediving around Africa, like maybe in Malawi, like what's going on in Lake Malawi. Shout out to the Freediving Cafe podcast in Dahab. You are producing some really, really cool content with your guests, and I'd also be curious to see what else is going on there. So that's, I guess, another call to action is to ask people who have stories, please come share them. Whether it's about yourself, people you know, your family, those would be really important stories to gather, to be shared.
I think there's a group called Koi Scouts and Sea Dogs. I would also like to ask to interview as well. Recently met them, got invited to do a dive with them where we just, a lot of people who don't have access to water, and getting them to come and dive together and seeing their experience and their enjoyment being in the water, how they were also, using their skills for sustainability fishing, and they would get fish to, have for themselves to use to eat and to give to their family members as well, and they also have a lot of ocean stories in their communities. But it's also very cool to see like the people that's in our backyards that, kind of lurk in the shadows, the people that I would see surfing or being in the ocean, and it's like, you can't necessarily don't know your story and how you got here, because you never, you're just one of those kids skateboarding around, and all of a sudden, you also got that opportunity to become, welcomed into the ocean, and you can experience the ocean in a different way. So for me, Koi Scouts and Sea Dogs, kind of those people as well, where it's like, none of us know who you were. And now, you're popping up and you're kind of enjoying the water, and you're opening doors for people in your communities to have access to experiencing also the corals around Cape Town, which is also really cool.
Yeah. Another really important topic to talk about is marine conservation as well. That's something that we definitely need to cover. How is climate change going to affect freediving in the future? I mean, I've heard some scary things about the level of toxicity in the Red Sea at the moment. So those freedivers in Dahab, like, how is it going to affect freediving the sport as a secondary issue to how is it going to affect the world? But I guess something that I wanted to say as well, when you were speaking, it reminded me that when I was on, I think, page 5 of Google, which is very disappointing, and ChatGPT, did the best of my research, lots of discussions as well, but came across this group in East Africa called the Bajuni people. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but they live off the islands of the coast of Kenya and Somalia and are known for their traditional freediving skills. I don't know how far back this cultural practice goes, but there was so little online about it. And that's also something that I'd like to talk about in Africa, is a erasure of culture and history. That's another reason that we wanted to do this. Part of the call to action is to uncover these, when I say uncover, I mean discover for ourselves these other cultural practices that are existing and persisting in Africa despite what it has gone through. Yeah, and also just to invite water wisdom keepers and all sorts of different stories to come to the fore. This is a place that we hope is risk accepting enough that the listeners want to come and join and get involved. But before we slowly bring this podcast to a close, Adrian, thank you so much for stepping up and creating this space. This wouldn't have happened without you. So big thanks. I'm really excited to finally be delving into this topic. It's something I've wanted to look at for a while. I just wasn't sure how to give justice to a continent. So I guess we're going to try and work it out together. And for the next 4 months, the listeners will be able to reach out with potential episode ideas and stories that they'd like to share on this platform. And if you'd like to reach Adrian or I, the information for the email address is in the description, or you can find us on Instagram. And you can find us on Instagram through @earthcast_. And Adrian, before we get to the last question, actually, no, we are at the last question. That's really disappointing. I wanted to keep talking forever. But what question should I have asked you during this process?
That's a tough one. Firstly, thank you as well also for, joining me, for us to be able to do this. If you weren't so, savvy with your podcast and had your experiences with podcasts before, I don't think I'd have ended up reaching out. I'd have probably still stuck in my bubble and been like, how am I going to do this? How am I going to do this? But we managed to find our way together to do this, and hopefully it all goes well. And now, for what should you have asked me during this conversation? It's funny because there's a lot to kind of unpack if I had to pop another question. But I'll stick one with in terms of this short period of time that I've been doing freediving for. I think at the end of this month in June, it would be a year that I've been in the realms of freediving for. And I think one of the tough ones would probably be the experience of becoming a competitive freediver, learning the new mental fortitude, learning to relax, learning to be calm, learning to balance my body, balance my mind, all while still balancing everything else, academics, my passion for doing so many sports, and always still wanting access. As much as I've joined freediving, I still find it difficult to let go of the other sports I've been doing. Funny story. I love sports, right? I love sports. And so the SA champs were coming around the corner and I was training for it. But I ended up playing in a soccer tournament before just because I love sports so much. And I got injured, And as much as the sport was teaching me balance, I was still stuck learning to do the balancing in reality. In the water, I could do it. But outside of the water, it's still a struggle. And so, in the water, you can do one thing, but on land, if you're not doing everything right, or not trying your best to do everything right, it will have consequences in the water. And so I think the question I'd say then that would be is, while doing the sport, as someone who's, studying, who's working, and who's competing, as a student, being age 23, where do you find your balance? I'd say that's the question for me, is where do you find your balance? I think understanding that your vision of your goal is up on top here, but then just starting at the bottom of your ladder and working from there, right? Otherwise, you end up with an unbalanced lifestyle looking like a seesaw, where you can be in the middle and be in control of it all and choose discipline and keep grinding it out, or you choose undisciplined side and, you end up navigating up and down in the seesaw. And so it's just kind of staying true to yourself, staying disciplined each and every day, and just reminding yourself your whys, and if your whys are strong enough, then you will end up getting to your goals. And so I definitely am pushing my best. I am human, so best believe that balance is not balancing out the way I wish it would have been. But I definitely, have the right network around me to grow. And hopefully that network keeps growing around me, and as well as myself, that I can keep growing, and so that I can keep achieving my goals. And, whatever's coming my way, that I'm ready for it because I've been prepping for it daily. And I'd say, that's how you find your balance. Just have a goal, start from the bottom, and then work your way up there. Pray about it, hope for the best, and just make sure that you just keep talking and feeding off from everybody else. That's another bad thing, having your goal and then being like, okay, guys, peace out. I'm going to do this on my own. And then just, no, that's just another way to fail again. Like you're always just going to need that community around you. You know, the stronger the community, the faster you get to your goal, the happier and the better you are getting there. But if you're going to be by yourself all on your own, that's one tough journey you're putting yourself into, which I personally wouldn't recommend because it never ends well.
Guys, thank you so much for tuning in today to Earthcast. We are so looking forward to hearing the listeners. You guys reach out to us with your stories. And just to reiterate, this episode is a call to action, to invite listeners to share their water stories and to create a full season where Adrian and I can unpack themes ranging from ocean inclusivity to competition freediving, but focusing on freediving history, cultures and competitions around the African continent.